Story 1. Having abusive parents completely skews your perception of normal. To this day, I'll relate something I thought was normal or funny and be met with looks of horror. Story 2. Poverty. My wife and I had very different upbringings. What she considers poor and what I consider poor are completely different levels of poverty. I am glad she never had to experience that growing up, but a little more understanding on why I am set in my ways on some things would be appreciated. She has explained that for her, the experiences my siblings and I had are so foreign to her that she just cannot understand. Story 3. Severe burnout, like full fugue state mental shutdown. Tried describing it to some folks and they just can't comprehend that level of chronic stress and exhaustion. Watching a movie or taking a day off is not going to help at that point. Story 4. Knowing someone who was murdered, not dead from old age or an illness or killed in an accident, but purposeful murder, is horrific on every level. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It makes a lot of issues more personal and less generally political, especially when you add in cultural context for the country it happens in. Story 5. What it's like to be homeless, and how easily one can end up homeless and how difficult it is to get back on your feet. So many of us are one bad turn of luck away from it, and I think about that a lot. Story 6. Domestic abuse is unfortunately common, and many people fall victim to it. It's challenging to explain what it's like to those who have never experienced it. It's one of those things where, if it happened to you, another victim will simply understand when you talk about it with them. The number of responses from people who have experienced domestic abuse is truly heartbreaking. I'm glad you managed to escape and heal. Story 7. Depression. More specifically, major depressive disorder. Many people have experienced some kind of depression in their lives, but when it lasts more than 3 weeks, like 30 years, it's another level that people can't understand. No, some kind of boot camp will not fix this. Story 8. Chronic pain. A few years ago, I had some health issues after COVID-19 and developed a condition that left me in constant pain for just over 18 months until surgery was finally able to fix it. Those 18 months were pure hell. Sure, you might think you know how mentally taxing it would be, but when it actually happens, it is worse than you can imagine. It affects every part of your life. You have to plan around it. You are constantly tired and have no desire to do anything, and just getting through the day is a struggle. I never got suicidal, but I could see how someone with chronic pain could get to that point. My quality of life was very low for over 2 years, including the COVID-19 that hospitalized me in the first place, and I have much more sympathy and understanding now for people who deal with chronic pain. Story 9. Getting in a car accident. Everyone seems to think they would take time to assess the situation, react accordingly, cleverly maneuver their vehicle into a safe position, and be fine. Nope. You're driving along and then 1,000 things happen in a split second and you are in a crushed up car, and it's all over before you have a second to make your first thought. This is what scares me about drivers, bikers, and pedestrians flying through traffic on pitch black winter nights, totally confident they would have all the time in the world to deal with any issues. Story 10. Bad childhood in general, because truly it's a rabbit hole unique to each of us. Other kids have it worse. I'll give you something to cry about. It irks me to hear your parents raised you right. Aside from money, I struggle to feel fulfilled mentally and am emotionally numb. I was a good parent. The crazy thing is, that's the tip of the iceberg. The disturbing thing is, this is relatable to too many. Story 11. Panic attacks. My ex always thought I was just being overdramatic about how an unexpected panic attack affected me for days. A few years ago, she called to say she had experienced one for herself and was very sorry that she had not been more understanding. Story 12. I almost didn't comment because this isn't a very common thing to encounter. Then I realized that rationale is at the root of what makes it so difficult to relate to. Some of you have probably heard of the troubled teen industry. In a nutshell, thousands of children are sent against their will to abusive facilities because their parents believe they require behavioral adjustments. These facilities go by varied ideologies: boot camps, behavior modification facilities, wilderness therapy, drug rehabilitation. This is just a cover. Even if you've never done drugs, they'll accept the child under the false pretense they are saving them from future behavior. However, they're all marketed to parents, who are often the root of the family's problem. as a miracle cure that will ensure an obedient outcome. I was tricked into visiting one of these programs by my mother when I was 14. I was far from a bad kid. I was simply an unwanted leftover from a previous marriage who was unloved and made the family scapegoat. The reason I'm responding to the question is that the idea can be so foreign to some that they cannot even wrap their heads around the concept, especially if they've grown up in a loving environment. I was subjected to physical, mental, and sexual abuse while I was held for 2 years in a warehouse located in an industrial park outside a large metropolis. One of the most evil aspects was that, in order for you to advance in the program and hopefully leave it one day, you were expected to inflict these indignities on the other children. It not only victimizes children, but it also instills them with deep shame. It also makes support group participation that much more difficult because your fellow captives are also your abusers. I hope you'll forgive the length of this post. Ironically, the need for a long introduction is at the center of what I'm wanting to communicate. I could literally explain what the experience was like for 2 weeks straight, and I probably only scratched the surface of what it's like to lose all of your rights and freedoms, to be subjected to brainwashing, tortured at the whim of the program's facilitators and other children or captives, to live in constant fear all day, every day for years without hope of escape. I denied it all happened until I was in my 40s. I've learned to be very selective about who I share the topic with because people, without meaning to, can respond in ways that can be triggering. I think this also speaks to the spirit of this issue. How can they be expected to respond if they are likely unaware of what the experience was really like or might be completely unaware that it's even happening at all in the United States today? Thank you for reading. I appreciate these moments when I get to express both the experience and, hopefully, spread awareness, ultimately exposing these privatized child prisons for hire. Story 13. Coming home and finding your door kicked in and all your belongings gone through. It will keep coming back for years. Every time you can't find something you used to have, and you wonder if it was stolen or misplaced. Story 14. The strange and beautiful feeling you get when a kid who isn't yours biologically starts calling you mom or dad because they've embraced the idea of you as their parent. Story 15. People often say you should forgive your parents because life is short and they are your parents. They don't know what it's like to make the decision of keeping them out of your life, sticking to it, and why it's necessary to do so. Story 16. Having cancer. I just got diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and although my family and friends are very supportive, they do not get the odd concerns, fears, or worries I have. I like to have a plan and to come up with a plan for all possibilities. And although it is reassuring they say that I will be fine, they do not get that I will be missing out on things due to surgery and recovery or possible radioactive iodine treatments. I am just told not to worry about it. I also feel like no one wants to talk about it either because it's too real or scary for them, but I feel very alone with no one to talk to about it. Story 17. Getting beat up. People who have never been in a real fight, especially guys, all act like if someone came at them swinging, they would handle it. They talk about what they would do to anyone who tried to beat them up, how they would react, and they have absolutely zero understanding of the fact that the first punch can debilitate you. Jaws break so easily, and the recovery time is so long. A punch to the throat or solar plexus will incapacitate most people long enough to get another hit in. Once you're on the ground, it's over, and you just have to hope the other person isn't about to kill you. They think they're going to be a hero in an action movie because they would never just stand still waiting to get punched like the bad guys in those movies do, and they don't understand that acting more like a real fighter than a choreographed punch victim will not save them. They have zero understanding of the fact that if the other guy has a knife, you'll be stabbed before you realize he has a knife, and you're probably going to die. They also don't really understand that if you win a fight, you're just the guy with fewer injuries. That doesn't mean you didn't get hurt, and it doesn't mean you aren't about to get arrested for assault, even if the other guy started it. The only win in a fight is getting away without anybody getting hurt. But these people who have never been hit in anger act like they're going to be tough. Story 18. Not having a job, getting laid off, and quickly realizing that this can affect anyone and everyone. You're no better or any less replaceable than the rest of us. Story 19. Bullying. Being pushed to the brink of just wishing you had never been born. Experiencing having another person intentionally tearing you apart day after day. experiencing it as a child and getting through it by telling yourself that someday you will grow up and they won't be able to hurt you anymore, only to realize years later that they never stop. They just get better at disguising it. Story 20. Being lost in the forest. It's a weird feeling, knowing where you are then suddenly not. It's really simple for people to say what you should have done, what you should have brought, but until it happens, you have no idea how easy it is. Even as someone who grew up in the north, lived my life in the bush, it is terrifying just how fast you can get turned around in the forest, where you swear you're on the right path and then that path is just gone. I've gotten lost a few times, thankfully only very short stints, and I was found in minutes, but it's still frightening. What's crazy is I was so close to home base and had no idea. The forest just swallows you up and disorients you in seconds. When they tell you to stop and stay, it's for a reason. Odds are you truly are closer to base than you realize. Never wander when lost, you only make it worse. Story 21. Definitely spousal abuse that continues for some time. Many people say, "Why do you stay? Why didn't you leave earlier?" They don't understand how much abuse destroys your self-esteem and sense of agency. Story 22. Growing up with abusive parents and siblings is incredibly challenging. The people who were supposed to love and protect you are the ones who bully you endlessly while you have to keep it a secret. It's the loneliest experience that most people just can't understand. Then you hear people say, "Get over it, they're still your family," which is extremely frustrating. I wouldn't go back in time even if you paid me. Narcissistic parents shift blame, mock, criticize, shame, and break your soul as a child. Story 23. Having to be the decider of whether a person should be removed from life support or life-saving measures. I have not experienced this yet, but my mother, who is currently battling cancer, made me the person who will make that call because she believes I will honor her wishes of not being hooked to machines and being do not resuscitate, and my sisters would not. I say it pretty easily now that I will honor her wishes, but even being given this responsibility is something I wonder about and how easy or difficult it will be to make that decision if it ever has to happen. Story 24. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. So many people say, "Oh my God, it's messing with my obsessive-compulsive disorder." If you actually knew what obsessive-compulsive disorder felt like, you would not be using it as a silly joke. The same thing goes for intrusive thoughts. An intrusive thought is not dyeing your hair blue. Story 25. Being in a car accident and, as a bonus, sustaining a head injury resulted in me not being the same anymore. I don't know who I was before the accident exactly. I'm not sure whether all my shortcomings were there before or if they are there now as a result of the accident. I tend to forget some things or people as soon as they are discussed, happen, or I meet them. Some remain clear as daylight, though. I can't explain it to people. Story 26. Being permanently physically and mentally disabled. My son had an anoxic brain injury at 5 months after surviving open-heart surgery. Unrelated. He can't walk or talk, is tracheostomy and ventilator dependent. I never got to experience the typical kid things, and because he's so involved, I don't have anything left for a second child. But he can smile and he cuddles into my chest when I hold him, and he gets mad if you turn his adventure time off. I'd give my life for my son instantly, no question, but the whole experience has really opened my eyes to just how much of the disabled community is hidden, and how families have to band together because insurance for sure isn't going to just volunteer information. This also made me more pro-choice than ever. No one considers their child being born or becoming disabled. Throughout my pregnancy, I did everything right. But I am so fortunate that my partner stayed with me, that he's been a good father, and that we have a family that supports us. I've heard so many stories about kids like my son being ignored, left in cockroach-infested beds, parents checking out, breaking up, etc. No one wants to think their aunt, neighbor, or friend would do that to their child, but it's way more common than you'd like to believe. And I'm not shaming caregiver burnout. That's normal and human. Go take care of yourself, but it's not caregiver burnout if you never cared to begin with. That, or some people don't have the support or resources they need. You really do see the heights of human compassion and the depths of human cruelty when you're in this position of vulnerability. It's been a wild ride, for sure. Story 27. The absolute soul-sucking weight that being in debt stacks on your shoulders. Whether you found yourself in debt due to medical issues, lost your job, were employed in an industry taken down by the COVID-19 pandemic, or had a change in marital status, it's like the debt takes up every minute of every day.